Well, we've seen the Bowling Green Falcons win games offensively. This past week, we saw them win with defense as Patrick Andrews from the Toledo Blade joins us now. Patrick, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Falcons, you don't know what you're going to get with this team, which makes them fun and makes them exciting. That defense came to play against Miami on Saturday.
This was a win completely unlike any win Bowling Green's had so far this year. They ran the ball incredibly well against one of the best run defenses in the country, to be frank. Matt McDonald, this is the first time he really didn't play well in a win. It was the first time Bowling Green really won without him. And like you said, they did it with defense. Demetrius Hardeman had a terrific performance. He was named the MAC East Defensive Player of the Week. Carl Brooks wasn't his usual self, but Walter Hare picked him up. It was a performance the defensive line could be proud of.
Speaking of the line, the offensive line, we know they rebuilt that with some transfers this year, and it takes a while for the lines to gel. This line is starting to come together. You mentioned the rushing attack against Miami. They're starting to get things done in the trenches.
This was just what the doctor ordered for this offensive line. You look at Jakari Robinson, they thought he was going to be eligible week one. It takes a while to wind his waiver through the NCAA's Byzantine system, and he makes his debut against Mississippi State. Until then, Jalen Grant, an offensive guard, had to play a lot of center. Cade Zimmerly, a Perrysburg grad, also had to play some center, and neither of them were quite perfect fits because that's not their natural position. But now for this game against Miami, in a game where they really needed their offensive line to step up, Robinson's in his natural position, Grant's in his natural position, and both players were absolutely terrific. Jason Patterson, Teron Keith, Jamal Johnson, they all had holes at points. Harold Bannon Jr., who had a big gain, they all had room to run. It's just such a departure from. Bowling Green was able to turn around a lot of their weak points from the early games of this season, and they got the win they needed against Miami.
We've reached the halfway point of the season. Has an identity emerged yet from this Bowling Green team?
Well, just when you think they have an identity, they're a team. We thought after Buffalo, they were pretty settled. When McDonald plays well, they can win. When McDonald doesn't play well, they don't win. Well, they come out and win a game where McDonald doesn't play well, but. They don't quite have an identity yet. Obviously, McDonald he's steering the ship. He's still an above-average quarterback in the MAC, and they got good pieces on the defensive line. But there isn't really one thing that they've done well in every game. In this game, not only was McDonald off, the wide receivers were off. I think Leffler in his availability this week talked about the idea of something on the order of 7 drops. We saw usually reliable tight end Christian Sims dropped a couple of the receivers dropped a couple. It was just an off day for them, but the running backs were able to pick up the slack. So to answer your identity question, I think their identity is they're adaptable. They're able to. They look at an opponent like Miami. They know that they're a defensive-minded team. This is a team that held Cincinnati, Kentucky, Northwestern all in check at various points, and they were able to kind of use Miami-style play against them. Miami could not run the ball. Bowling Green could run the ball, and that's what made them so successful on Saturday. That's a credit to Scott Leffler. He's really done well in that regard this season. If
I'm hearing you right, you're saying Bowling Green won a game where they didn't play their best football, which is a tremendous step forward for this program.
Absolutely. They're against Marshall. We saw it was a little bit like the old Bowling Green in that they went down early, but then they had to be perfect from there on out. Mac McDonald's 23 for 33 to close the game. They had to get all these things had to go their way. Marshall had to have the touchback fumble out of the end zone for them to get back in that game. And against Akron, they barely held on against. And Akron is probably the worst team in the league, and Bowling Green barely held on to that. But against Miami, we saw Bowling Green not play their best football. Like I said, McDonald, the drops, the defense still can get gashed a little bit at times, but they were much better. They're improving as the season goes forward, and I think you alluded to we wouldn't have seen that in 2019, 2020, 2021. They were just so young then, and you can definitely tell that there's veterans heavy on this team. From the offense, it starts with McDonald. It starts with some of the receivers they brought in by the transfer portal. On the defense, it starts with Brooks and Hare. Those guys on the leadership council, Coach Scott Leffler, he made reference after the Miami game to he didn't like how they were preparing midweek, and so the leadership council called a players-only meeting that Thursday, and he credited that for getting the team's energy up, and I think that that veterans heavy is really going a long way for Bowling Green this year.
Leffler is fond of saying it doesn't matter what the emblem is on the helmet. Bowling Green's got to play Bowling Green football. The MAC has been extremely chaotic this year. We haven't even gotten into November in MACtion yet. And Bowling Green is really part of that chaos because week in and week out, you're not sure what you're going to get out of Bowling Green. You're not sure what you're going to get out of most of the Mid-American Conference.
Yeah, Bowling Green's in a pretty good spot right now, all things considered. They might get some help on Saturday from their rival with Toledo playing Buffalo, who's first in the division. this is a golden opportunity for BG, honestly, to get a game in the division race. If Buffalo loses and they can score a victory in Mount Pleasant, it won't be easy. Central Michigan, I would say they're a little bit better than their record indicates, with the caveat that the MAC is pretty down this year. Central Michigan, they can run the ball just like Miami. They're a lot like Miami, so I expect that to be another low-scoring game. But it's a game. Bowling Green wins that game. You're 4-4 going into action. You're in the catbird seat for pole position, and you can start thinking about Detroit a little bit. It's not too far-fetched. So this is going to be a critical game for Bowling Green. But if they play like they did this week, if they play even a little better than they did this week, they should be in good shape.
We've seen BG win on the road at Akron. Now they head up to Mount Pleasant, as you alluded to, a Central Michigan team that loves to run the ball. Central, we saw them put up a lot of points against Oklahoma State, but that almost seems like a mirage now. That was so far ago that this Chips team has really struggled the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they've been kind of snake bitten. I think their loss to Toledo, that was really a killer, because Central Michigan, not only did they play with Oklahoma State, they played with Penn State a little bit for about a half of football, and they've kind of faded a little bit since then. I have a few teams that got off to strong early starts in this league, and like you said, that's what makes the MAC so chaotic. But Bowling Greens are going to have to key in on stopping the run they did this week, and that's why it was so big for them to get guys to step up on the defensive line besides Carl Brooks this week. It was big for them that Demetrius Herman played as well as he has played all year. Walter Hare played as well as he's played all year. Now, if they could marry that to all their linebackers stepping up. Darren Anders played very well this week, but other than that, it was really the line this week. But if they didn't get the complete defensive performance that the score might indicate on Saturday, if they get that against Central Michigan, they're gonna be in pretty good shape for what would be yet another paradigm shifting victory. It's never a dull moment with Bowling Green, as you've made reference to on this show.
And I think that's going to be our next sign of maturity for this Falcon program. They've won a game. Can they continue to build on that and not look ahead and just take care of business at hand and not get distracted? I want to thank our guest from the Toledo Blade, Patrick Anders, for sharing his insight on the Bowling Green Falcons. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Mark.